Welcome to the Leveling Up Podcast, guys. It is another beautiful day, and I'm your success strategist, Brigham Blackham. I'm so grateful to be here. We have Ferenc Toth on today, and one of the things you need to know about him is he is not just an amazing speaker and a info genius when it comes to your personal banking, but he's someone that walks the walk, breathes in all of the things with personal and professional development, and he helps so many people. He's got over 1 million listeners in his radio show, and we're going to talk a little bit about his hard-won wisdom. So without any further ado, we're going to hit this topic, and we're going to have a lot of fun today. Welcome to the call, my friend. How's it going today?
It's going awesome. Thanks for having me on, Brigham.
Oh, it is absolutely a pleasure. Well, Frank, let's start with your background. I know you've got literally decades in this business, and you have grown this through consistency as far as honing your voice and helping people really take control of their financial intelligence. Would you mind sharing your background, your origin story? I want to hear why this matters so deeply to you and your passion behind it.
Well, if you want to go all the way back, it would be my childhood. My dad died in a drowning accident when I was 7 years
Oh,
old. So we went from an upper middle class. He was an engineer, that kind of thing. And my mom was a school teacher, but had 3 kids. So we went from an upper middle class lifestyle to very lower middle class
mhm.
almost immediately. And so I lived it. We struggled, our whole lives. So when I didn't get the financial literacy education from my family or school or anything else, like most people. And so when I learned about some of these techniques and stuff, I just found it was personal. I
Mm.
lived it. And when I talk to people about basic financial literacy concepts, in fact, I taught a college certified financial literacy course for a couple of years, for example. I was chair of the board of an FDIC insured bank. I did that just so I could learn more about banking.
Yeah.
Um, it's near and dear to my heart, and so few people know this stuff. So that's why it's a passion of mine to share.
Wonderful. Now you've got a program that people have been tuning in for not just a couple of years. This has been a passion project of yours. When did you first start your radio program, and how did you get so dialed in with your voice?
Well, the voice, I guess, just, God bless me with that. So can't do much about that one. But I was speaking around the country. Actually, that led from clients, helping clients, enhance their financial future. One led to some speaking engagements, started traveling around the country. That was about 12, 14 years ago.
Mhm.
Next thing I know, I'm traveling all over the country, speaking to different investor groups. One of them came to a workshop, said, "Hey, you need to be on the radio. I can get you on an interview." I did a 20-minute interview. The owner of the radio station came in, and this was Money Radio in Phoenix, by the way, where I'm located out of. And he
Nice.
said, "How long you been on the radio?" I said, "Never. This is my first interview." He goes, "You're kidding. You're lying." I said, "No, but I've been speaking for over a decade." He goes, "Oh, it shows." He goes, "How'd you like?" After talking to me about an hour, asking about the Your Personal Bank concept, what I do, he says, "You're unique." They've been there for 30 years, this radio show, Money Radio, it's called.
Mhm.
And he goes, "We've had every kind of financial guy you can imagine, but you're unique, you're different, you got a great message. How would you like having your own show?" Like, wow, I never considered that. So they had a guy retiring, gave me a spot, later turned into a couple hour show. It's an hour weekly show, and then 2 hours. And then other stations started reaching out around the country saying, "Hey, we love your content." It's
Yeah,
all been organic. I'm over 20 radio stations coast to coast at this point
that's phenomenal.
over the
Now,
past 6 years, roughly.
as we talk about this idea of hard-won wisdom, I actually came
Mhm.
up with a few different ways to approach this as a topic.
Sure.
One of the things I wanted to do is first define what I am anticipating wisdom is, and I wanted to get your take on this. So for me, hard-won wisdom is tasting, not testing, but tasting knowledge, blended intellect with insight, and applying experience with discernment, diligence, and discipline. Would love to hear your take on what that comes to mind for you. What is hard-won wisdom in your mind?
Well, I guess my definition of wisdom is learning from other people's experiences.
Mm,
So you can either go and learn and make the mistakes yourself, and I've done plenty of those, as we all do. But
yeah.
sometimes having a mentor, learning from somebody else who's been there, done that, and willing to share, you can circumvent that process or that learning curve, or avoid some of those mistakes,
Yeah.
and really turbocharge, speed up the process by learning
Beautiful.
again from other people's experience.
I think that's so good. When I think of wisdom, this is part of it is you definitely want to make sure that you have other people's experience, but don't discount your own experience too,
Of
right?
course.
My background, I taught Mandarin Chinese for years, for 7 years in high school, and I also was a return missionary, have theatrical background, so all these storytelling elements come together. This is a very interesting word. This is the word for wisdom in Mandarin, the zhi, right? Zhihui is the full word, but the zhi portion, this is intellect, everything that you know, as far as the things that you know at a mind level, but hui, zhihui, when you combine it, that's your not just your intellect, but the insight behind why you do certain things. It's the nitty gritty. It's really understanding the heart behind the nuance of why you choose certain things. And I thought
Interesting.
it was also fascinating because I was doing a little bit, I'm a word guy, so I love to play with different words. From the Latin, sapere is to taste or to know. This is the word for wisdom. And then in Spanish, sabio, or in English, sapient, like Homo sapien, is the word for wisdom. And wisdom carries the idea that true knowledge, true knowing is like tasting. It's experiential and felt, not just theoretical. That's the
Interesting.
difference between thought and knowing something up in your head and wisdom, which is experiential. That comes right back down to learning from somebody else and learning from yourself. So how have you been able to learn from your own experiences and maybe come up with one of those stories that you're like, oh man, I wish I would have known this earlier. It's one of those
Oh gosh, that that one. There's a lot of those. A lot of stuff happens to you. One of my things I teach people when I work with
Mhm.
clients. I have a lot of entrepreneurs who are clients, real estate
Yeah.
investors, etc. And I always say, don't be like the dinosaurs. Evolve or die.
Ooh, I love that.
I mean, yeah, and I was sharing that with you earlier, Brigham.
That's
Your
right.
person, we call it your personal bank 3.0 at this point.
Mhm.
I've been in business for 25 years. We've had massive changes into our industry, whether it's the 0809 financial crisis
Right.
caused significant change. Obviously, COVID shutdowns, massive change in how we do business, start to finish. So it truly is your personal bank 3.0. But what I would have liked to know, gosh, I mean, I wish I had a time machine, right? I wish I didn't know, you know, some of the stuff, I don't know, Brady, you just can't predict. You can't predict a financial crisis. You can't
Yeah.
predict a COVID shutdown, right? Again, you learn, like when that COVID was a big one, because
Mm.
one of the things, I'd been in business at that point roughly 20 years. Every single client I'd ever met or worked with prior to that, I'd met in person before they became a client,
Right.
either one-on-one at a workshop, something. But the statement I would say is we slapped skin. We'd actually met, you know what I mean?
Right. Like,
Because I'm very,
you
very much in a
connected with them.
yeah, right. Very much in a relationship type business, right? Financial
Mhm.
planning, advising, all that stuff, right? Well, the bottom line is you couldn't meet any, I was speaking around the country, right? Yes, I was on the radio too, but
Mhm.
most of my clients were coming from existing clients and whatnot, but speaking, all that shut down like within a week or two.
Yeah.
And so I'm like, okay, how am I going to generate new business, new clients? I hadn't done it for 20 years ever, not one. Okay, so I took a couple 3 months to kind of recalibrate and think about and how to market. And again,
Mhm.
your personal bank 3.0 came above it, and the radio show and that kind of stuff is really what picked up the slack. And now, yeah, we
Mhm.
do more business than ever. It was a blessing in disguise, but when it first hit you, you're up at night thinking, oh my gosh, what am I going to do?
Yeah,
Right? How
for
am I going to
sure.
generate business? Or am I out of business? And for 2 or 3 months, there was but zero new business for several months
Phew.
until we figured it out. And about half, I'm going to say easily half of my competitors just retired or moved on or went into other fields because they weren't able to evolve.
Mm.
The
Not being
survivors,
able, yeah,
yeah, the survivors obviously do and benefit because, well, there's less competition, right?
right. Yeah. If you adapt, then you can actually make something happen that's
Hmm.
in the future. But if you always stay the same, that's a really dangerous thing in business. Say, well, this is the way we've always done it. So that's the way it's
Yeah.
going to be done. And you're like, well, you're going to be done like a steak, my friend.
Yeah,
And
exactly.
you're going to get
And it's
eaten
not
by
like
those
you can
guys that
go
are
to a
adapting.
book or, I had a couple of couple of mentors I talked to but even for them, the COVID shutdown was really, that's something we've never experienced from a
Mm.
business or economic standpoint, right?
Yeah.
Well, it'd been 100 years since our country had a pandemic. So there's nobody alive to experience or talk to about how does this work? How do you do this? How do you deal with this?
Yeah. Well, let's talk about this for a second. I think it's
Yeah.
interesting being able to not just shift your business during COVID, but
Hmm.
playing with things that you don't necessarily feel comfortable with yet. This is a great quote by Abraham Lincoln, or at least is attributed to him. It says, "Sometimes it's better to remain silent and be thought a fool than to speak and remove all doubt."
I like that one.
What did you originally do over the last, let's say, 5 years that maybe on the outside you're like, oh, I don't know if this is the right thing, but it seemed like the right principle. And then as you did it, you're like, oh, now I know it's right, or now I know it's not. How did you make that level of judgment? Because sometimes people don't adapt well. And it sounds like you've
Right.
not only been able to adapt well once or twice, but you've consistently been able to adapt.
I followed my heart because it really the change, particularly with COVID, came about, went from speaking engagements to being on the radio. Those are two different, totally
Yeah.
process to market, reach people, yeah, the whole process, right? And approach, you name it. And prior to COVID, my radio show was really more of like a secondary thing. The speaking was primary. And it
Mhm.
was sort of, hey, go to my radio show, learn more about this financial tool I'm teaching you about. And so it was really more informational in terms of focused on the financial products.
Yeah.
Well, for me personally, um, I wasn't very political or anything like that prior. But when they went to shut down small business, I've been a small business entrepreneur my whole life, and that's super close to my heart. And many of my clients are small business owners, and I saw, many of them lose their business. Some of them multi-generational. Boom, gone.
Oof.
Oh, that
Heartbreaking.
pissed. Frankly, Brigham, it pissed me off.
Yeah.
To be totally fair, I was angry, and I went on the radio, and I mean, blasted. I said things like, "I don't recognize my country. What is this? Is this Venezuela? Is this Russia? I mean, my dad escaped from the Soviets. Okay, I'm first generation American, so that's important to
Mhm.
me too."
Yeah.
And I just went off, and so much so my wife even said, "You sure you want to put that out there because you're going to become a target?" I said, "Yeah, I'm pissed." And I got more response from that show. Amen, brother. You're preaching to the choir. You're sharing exactly what we feel. Keep it up. They started calling me the town crier. So the
Yeah.
whole shift of my radio show really changed from just financial products and tools to anything about our money, policies, current events, and man, that's when the other radio stations showed up. I started going, that's when I went national, and
Yeah.
everything just blew up. And I was just following my heart because I was just sharing what I believed I knew the truth to be and what was important to me. So I
I
don't know if there was a like step by step thing. Sometimes you just got to go within yourself. You've got to pray.
Mm.
You've got to really, seek some wisdom, like you said, some spiritual guidance, and try
Yeah.
to follow what is to be true and right, even when it's not easy.
Mm. And when you go within, you never go without. You think about the
Yep.
challenges that all of us live through. If we
Yep.
stay silent when we are passionate about something, especially when we
Mm.
know that we can have something that will help somebody else,
Right.
man, that's that's one of the days that I'm afraid of, is any day that I'm not able to provide value to somebody.
Right.
That's huge. Now, one of the other things I wanted to bring up with this topic, I think it's fascinating. This is a quote by Aristotle. I thought this was good. It says, "It is the mark of an educated man to be able to entertain a thought without accepting it." I'm sure you've had people on your radio show that
Constantly.
were diametrically opposed to you in so many different ways. Let's
Absolutely.
hear, how did you hold space for their ideas and their values and honor them as far as their ideas, even though you 100% didn't even kind of agree with it?
Right. Well, I mean, I've already kind of shared. I'm first generation American. I'm white, male, Christian. I don't.
Uh-huh.
I fit the I've served in the military. Okay,
Yep.
I fit the. I'm not. I'm very conservative, and
Mhm.
I'm very open about that and direct. Now, my radio show airs in places like San Francisco.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. I mean, which are just Anyway, I remember one caller reaching out to me, very, very angry about some things I shared. Called me a lot of nasty names I won't repeat, and even gave me his phone number and said, "Hey, you don't have the guts to call me." Well, of course, I always call those people and make it a point. He was a little shocked. I called him, and I said, first thing I said to him, like you said, hold a place. I completely disagreed with his position. First
Mhm.
thing I said is, first of all, sir, calling me all these names is probably not a great way to win me to your point. But I'm going to
That's
ignore that for now. I'm going to set that aside and share with you why I feel the way I do. And part of it is my experience, my upbringing. You may have had a different
Mhm.
one. I respect that. Part of the reason I served in the military is, look, you have the right to disagree. We all do,
Mm.
but we can respect each other. We ended that call on a fairly good note. Again, to me, it's important. Freedom's important. I'm very much into the founding principles of our country. Our founding fathers argued a lot about a lot of topics, disagreed about a lot, but they respected each other,
Yeah.
even though they had different opinions. And I think that's a really good model to follow.
Yeah. Respect is absolutely something that's earned, but you can also give respect whether somebody respects you back.
Right.
Your way that you treat other people doesn't have to be contingent on their treatment of you. So
Yeah, you
beautiful insight.
treat other people the way you would like to be treated, and in most cases, they will follow, even if
Mm.
they vehemently disagree. And by the way, many of my clients, we totally disagree on many issues, many social
Yeah.
issues or political issues or whatever, but we respect each other. They respect the information and the value I bring to them, and I'm open with them that I don't agree with their positions, but I'll respect you
I
because you
think
have the right to your opinion.
I think everyone's entitled to their own wrong opinion, right?
Yep. You have the right to be wrong.
You have the right
Okay.
to be wrong. And if we're really interested in growing wisdom, we have to test our opinions against like
Iron
cold hard
sharpens iron.
facts. Exactly. And if your opinion is so precious that you're not willing to test it against other people's opinions, you're like, oh, I don't actually believe this.
You have a very
Yeah.
weak position.
Very
Yeah,
weak.
yeah.
So
I'll give you
perfect.
one other quick example.
Yeah, go
So,
ahead.
I was talking, talking about my radio show and money and stuff. A while back, I was talking a lot about, you know, green energy and energy policy and stuff like this. And
Mhm.
I had a client who was very, very pro green energy. And as I stated to her, she'd listen to the show. She was a little upset about it. And I said, look, I'm not against green energy. In fact, one of those that I like all forms of energy, wind, solar, oil, nuclear,
Yeah.
whatever, natural gas, you name it. Because to me, the strength is the diversity of it. I used an analogy. I said, if I, as financial person, said to you, "Hey, Brigham, go put all your money in one stock with one company," what would you say to me?
Uh, I better really know the stock, but no,
Yeah,
I
you'd probably say you're kind of
no
crazy,
thanks.
right? And
Yeah.
why would you say that? And the obvious reason is
Man,
you wouldn't want to put all your eggs in one basket, right?
yeah, we have expressions for that.
Yeah, exactly. And I said to her, so putting all our eggs into wind or solar, that's just stupid. Putting all our eggs in one basket.
Mhm.
And regardless of how good it is, the power, the strength of our grid is the diversity of it. Each
Mhm.
has strengths and weaknesses. They all do. That's a fact. But I said,
Yeah.
but my real problem, and so she kind of backed down. She said, that's hard to argue with. And then I said, but my real problem is our government, in my opinion, has no constitutional authority to force it down our throats. She goes, well, that's where you and I agree. I said, well, there you go. You find a point of agreement with somebody who's,
Yeah.
and I said, ma'am, this is where you and I have more in common. By the way, if we talk some more, you'd probably find out you and I have more in common than either of us have with those bureaucrats in Washington.
Mm.
And she said, you're probably right. She's
That's
a
so
client.
good.
Yeah.
One of the things that I've learned over the years is as you look for that zone of agreement,
Hmm.
it often can expand. But if you start on the zone of disagreement,
Yep.
that will expand. It's what you
Right.
focus on. It's not
Right.
what is reality. A lot of times it's here's what my belief is, and then you hear what theirs is. And because you gave them space, like, well, let's find where we agree on this. What are the things that we have in alignment so we don't have to talk about that more? We can expand that zone of agreement. So important. Now, I've
That's
got
so
another,
powerful. Yeah, I was
I've
gonna
got,
say,
oh,
my
go ahead.
last thought on that, if you don't mind, is yeah,
Yeah, go
whatever
ahead.
you focus on, like you said, I love that. You're gonna get more of it. And
Mhm.
so one of my pastor taught me this years ago. If you're worrying and you're praying in a worried emotional state, guess what you're gonna get more of? If you're
Worry.
worried and anxious, you're gonna get more worry and more anxiety.
Ooh, that's
You
good.
get what you focus on.
Absolutely. Sharon Lecter said it like this. I had her on my podcast a little back, and she said, praying, no, how is it? She said, what was the expression? Right on the tip of my tongue. 1 second. I'm going to get it. I'll pull her words from the ether. She said, it'll come back to me. I can't remember off the top of my head. It was right
I'll
there.
give you one more thought. Give you
Oh
a
yeah,
chance.
go ahead. I'll
Yeah,
give you.
in the
It'll
financial
come
side,
back.
that's the other part is too. You look, if you focus on lack financially, guess what you're going to get more of? If you
More
focus
light.
on abundance, it's a spiritual principle. It's not just dollars and cents.
Yes. So here it is. Worry is praying for your problems to come true. I was like, that's the quote that she said. I think it's so
I
good
like
though.
that.
Anytime that we are in a negative state or a low emotional intelligence experience, we're going to get more of what we are focusing on. A lot of times we talk about something called the triad in the final percent, where what you focus on as far as your language will create your beliefs and the
Absolutely.
language around that. So what you focus on creates that language. And then what that language does is it impacts your physiology or the state of your being. And all of those is a cyclical pattern. So
Yep.
if we can really focus on our physiology, change the state where we're like, man, I'm so excited about what's coming next, praying with enthusiasm, excitement, and a seeking for wisdom, suddenly we're going to get
Right.
more of that because we're coming in at a higher frequency.
Right.
Anyway, that was such a fun little tangent. I'm so glad.
Yeah.
One of the things that I was looking for as far as wisdom was what are some of the expressions or the ideas in finance that are deeply rooted even in our language that you have an insight on. Here's one that I've heard many times in lots of different contexts. Penny wise, but pound foolish. I mean, you're a financial guy.
Right.
What comes top of mind for this? What is the pattern that you're like, oh, I wish people just knew this one thing, fix everything.
Lost opportunity cost and
Yes.
compound interest, the power of compound interest.
Mhm.
The average study after study shows us the average American investor has a attention span of a gnat. Okay.
Yeah.
Um, Although you're told to invest for the long term, we all hear that. Obviously, the average person holds, let's say, a mutual fund 4 to 5 years. Well, that's not a long enough time period for an account to really accomplish much of anything in most
Yeah.
cases. But your personal bank really thrives in somebody that can think in a little bit longer term, and the power of compound interest, growing your money every year, regardless of what happens. The In every story, we've all heard it. The turtle beats the hare. Just give the turtle time, right? But yet we all want to, day trade. We want to do this. We want to do that because, we're in a microwave society, right? We want it all
Right.
now. And there's very few situations where people do that, where they, do really well. I mean, most people, by the way, don't make money in the stock market,
Yeah.
don't grow their wealth that way. Most people actually building a business and make money building their business. Your personal bank can enhance that, creating
Mm-hmm.
access to funds to help you grow your business, that stuff along the way. And then after they maybe sell the business or retire or something, then they put the money in the stock market but they grew it, growing their wealth in their business, most likely. That's the number one way people grow wealth in the United
Yes.
States.
That's
Not even close.
brilliant because you've got a massive income strategy with a business. There's tons of tax incentives. You can even buy the real estate
Exactly.
under the business, and
Yep.
all of the
Yep.
honestly, the economic benefits are immense when you're running a business. If you are only a W-2 employee or 1099 contractor,
You're
there are
limited.
so many things that you're limited with. Yeah, like you don't have nearly as many tax write-offs. You don't have access to the same amount of capital because now you're limited to what you can qualify for on your own personal tax return versus what you have in your entire business, all the different lines of credit, all the different options. So I think that's
I say this
brilliant.
to entrepreneurs all the time. Again, probably 3/4 of my clients are entrepreneurs.
Yeah.
And I say, stop focusing on the investment so much. Your economic engine is you and your business. And
Yeah.
Warren Buffett says, your education, what you know,
Mm.
the information, your knowledge. What can you do to go make some more money? I can show you how to make that money grow faster, not lose it, eliminate risk, reduce taxes, all that. But how do you build wealth? What's your what can you grow? What can you do to grow and make money?
Yeah.
That's
Making
your
money,
economic driver right there.
this is something that they don't really teach well in school.
Nope.
And the people that are teaching school, because I was a teacher,
Right.
are so ill-equipped at the end of the 4 or 6 years that they go through school that they're like, well, I make all this money. Now what do I do with it? No one ever taught me how to invest my money. They never told me what to do
Right.
with this so that I can
Right.
grow it. Because it doesn't necessarily matter where you acquire all your money from. It's
Right.
what you do with that money that will either
Right.
make it grow or diminish into nothing and turn into
Well, the
debt
other
that's
common thing I see is far
negative.
too many people put far too much of their money at risk, not realizing how much risk they really are. So, again, you say I run into entrepreneurs make good money, and they're like, "What am I going to do?" Well, I guess I'll put it in the stock market because they don't know what else to do. They like, what else is
Yeah.
there? Well, there's a lot of things out there. That's why your personal bank. What I do in the show is I teach people how do the wealthy may actually grow money. How do banks make money? I say all the time. Look, you can love banks or hate them. I don't really care. But we can agree they're savvy about money and we can learn from them. And
I
one
think,
of the things that banks don't do, put money at risk.
mm,
They
yeah,
don't. Okay. And if you're an entrepreneur, you put money at risk, most likely to build that business, whatever it was. You took a calculated risk. And if you succeeded, you won. Great. Why would you take that money then and turn around and subject it to new risk and taxes after you've already won the first time? Why would you risk again?
absolutely. One of the things that pops up in my head is when we're talking about wisdom and how it's hard won,
Yep.
it's not enough to just do it for yourself. This is one of the reasons why I think you probably have your show. This is one of the reasons why I'm doing my show is
Hmm.
you get to a point where you're like, I have learned this much. I want to make sure other people can
Yep.
come along with me. And it's not a handout to share this type of information. It is a hand
No.
up.
Right.
And when I think of this is a quote my dad said all the time. It's 3 John 1:4. It says, I have no greater joy than to hear that my children walk in truth. When you are sharing financial wisdoms, when you're sharing true wisdom, it is a truth. It doesn't matter where you learned that truth. If it is true, it's true today, it's true yesterday, it's true in the
Yep.
future.
Right.
And those laws of nature and of God change everything. Because if you can have that solid foundation, then you can build on it.
Right.
So what comes top of mind for you when you hear this? I have no greater joy than to hear my children walk in truth.
It's there's so much lack of basic financial literacy in our country.
Mhm.
Again, it's not taught in the home. It's not taught in. I have one of my agents that worked for me for years. She got a master's of business administration, thinking she would learn how to build a business and grow her money. No, not a
Yeah.
clue. Didn't teach her a thing. I got another some mentor, or I'm sorry, well, I became their mentor, but they worked for me from they were one of the top 5 business schools in the country in Phoenix. Okay, brilliant young guys. And I would ask them these questions. Okay, you've got all these ideas of how to build multi-million-dollar businesses. What are you going to do with it when you earn it? I don't know. I guess put it in the stock market. I mean, that was their answer. These are some of
Ah,
the top business people in the country. Young. One of them, after teaching him, in fact, I interviewed him, Ishan. He won the Young Entrepreneur of the Year award this past year. He has the largest hearing aid company in the world today. I
that's
started,
amazing.
and he points out in there, because some of the things I taught him in terms of using the tools to build your wealth, do it consistently, don't put it at risk, have access to monies, understand compound interest, the power of compound interest.
Yeah.
Okay, your money at 7%, your money will double every year, every decade on it. Well, goes to two, two to four, four to six, six to eight. And I remember one of the folks saying, I understand that, and I want to start building and doing this again, not at risk. Because if you have risk, you ride the ups and downs. You want to eliminate as
Mhm.
much risk as possible. Institutional investors, banks, what's now, are risk adverse, not risk takers. They want to
Right.
grow their money consistently and steadily. She understood this. She worked for me. And she said, I understand all this, but I want to pay off some bills and do this. And I'll get started next year. I said, here's your problem. Understanding compound interest. It's not the difference you make in this next year. One goes to two, two to four, and so on, right? It's the last year. Because remember, one goes to two, two to four, four to six, four to eight, eight to 16, and so on. What you miss on it is the last year it would have gone to 16. She goes,
Mm.
holy cow, I didn't think of it that way. And that
Yeah.
goes into that lost opportunity cost. I'll share another quick example. It's gotten a ton of response in the last few weeks on my show. So I had this young guy, great guy, really sharp. He has a car payment, making $600 a month car payment. He was paying $1,200 a month because he wants to pay it down early. Good on him for that. Okay, get out of debt. That's a good idea.
Yeah.
But I said to him, you have two choices. And here's the problem you're having. Here's the mistake you're making. You don't even realize it. This is 99% of Americans are doing. When you're making payments to that truck, those dollars, you're paying off the debt early. That's all great. But when you make those payments, are you ever going to see any benefit from those dollars ever again?
Oh.
No, those dollars are gone. Okay. What if you put it in a personal bank, borrowed against it, set it up as an asset, borrowed against it, earn some positive arbitrage, pick up a couple percent positive arbitrage every year the rest of your life on the money you're using to pay for that truck?
Yeah.
Are you going to have more money in your pocket? And the light bulb went on. He's like, holy cow, this is incredible.
Let's
So
quickly define positive arbitrage. So if you have 5% that you're loaning against, what's something that would be expected? Like if you're getting back 7%,
yeah, let's say you're making 6-7% on the money, guaranteed, tax-free, insured, guaranteed, right? Yeah. And then you borrow against it. Let's say it costs you 5% to borrow. Well, Brigham, if your money's growing at 7 and you're borrowing at 5, what's your money doing?
2% or more every single year.
Yeah, but again, and the 2% though isn't just 2%; it's on money you spent on a truck payment, for example, or an investment or anything else. And some people say, well, 2% is not a lot. Well, and by the way, that's a historical average over the last 40 plus years.
Yeah,
2% is not a lot. Okay, if you were investing money and you got a 10% return on investment, would you be fairly happy with that?
Depends on context.
Most people would.
We'll say yeah.
Yeah, generally speaking, yeah. Well, if I increase your return on your investments to 12%, who's going to be happier? Who's going to have more money? That's a 20% increase in your ROI. Show me a business. You increase their top line profit by 20%. Are you kidding me? That's massive. Each and every year, the rest of your life, and compound that, you're going to have a whole lot more money. The key to it, though, is the mistake people make is they don't realize that the money they're using to pay that truck payment, using that example, by giving up control of that money, you give up the ability to earn anything on that money ever again the rest of your life.
Yep.
Most of us make our money, we pay our bills, and we try to live on the rest, which if we save 10% of our income, we're in the top 5% of Americans, right? We're considered a good saver.
Yeah.
Which means you're investing 10% of what you bring in the door. Well, why not do what my doctor did? He recognized this a decade ago. He started putting money in these policies and then borrowing against them to pay for the expenses of his practice. It took him 5 years. Within 5 years, he got enough money built up. Now he flows everything into his practice, gross, borrows against, gets positive arbitrage on everything that flows through his practice. Does this guy have more money? Yeah. I real estate investors have done over what one I was talking to the other day. In the last 7 years, using this tool, they did purchase 57 properties, pay cash for the property, borrow against it, buy the property outright, and then secure their long-term financing and pay it back. And they've done that 57 times in the past 7 years.
That's amazing.
Why is that so wonderful?
This is amazing because you think about it, you're getting paid to use your own money.
Right.
2% or depending on 2 to maybe 3%.
Don't forget, Brigham. And don't forget the cost, the transaction costs that most investors typically have, points, fees, borrowing costs, all off the table.
Yeah.
So now their profit is 10, 20, 30% more than a typical real estate investor. They love it.
Yeah, it makes a lot of sense. That's the thing is when I first learned this model, it was probably 4 years ago, I started really getting into infinity banking and this idea. It felt like a strategy that was only for the wealthy.
Right.
Literally only for those that had excess money significantly. They're like, okay, now I can buy this whole life for this term, all these different products. But how have you been able to make it accessible for mom and pop businesses? Because that's your bread and butter.
Yeah, I even asked that question when I first learned about it 14 years ago. I'm like, the first conference I went to, they were talking about doctors making $500,000 a year or plus. They're talking about multimillionaires and all that. And I even said to them, why do you keep focusing on all that? And the answer, wouldn't it work for the guy who makes $50K a year? Like, yeah, of course. Why don't you talk about that? And they're like, well, we make more commission on a bigger case. I mean, if you want to know the
Yeah.
truth, Brigham, that's the reason why the focus is with the ultra wealthy, because,
Right.
well, the people putting it out there make more money. Well, I realized at that point I had like 4,000 clients already
Mhm.
in our financial business, and we
Yeah.
were doing reviews with them already. So we're meeting with them anyway on annual reviews. We thought, well, why
Yeah.
not present this idea to them, because we're meeting with them anyway. It went over like gangbusters. And then that's what led to the speaking and then the radio and all that we talked about earlier. And what I realized was the average typical financial person out there, they don't have the ability to reach out to large groups of people like I've been able to do through the
Right.
speaking and then the radio. I'm blessed that way. So I don't have to make as much money off each client. I can
Right.
mass educate a whole lot of people through my radio show. I used to do it through workshops, right? If I have 100 investors in the room. And now I don't have to spend an hour or two with each one of those people who are interested explaining everything. I just educated a whole group. Now they come to me, they have a handful of questions that are specific to them, and they're generally ready to get started. It's more efficient.
Absolutely. Because they already know you a little bit because they've been listening to your
Right.
program and they start
Right.
to connect. Oh, well, this works for them and them and that.
Hmm.
All of that works for your benefit. So, as far as being able to find not just this tool useful, but actually using it, because there's a difference between having a tool that you can know about and actually using it. How have you been able to help people get over the hump of just putting money in and after the fact going and using it to buy real estate or to buy businesses or
Sure.
to do things with that money? What's that
See,
hurdle like?
that's why I call it a paradigm shift in thinking about money.
Mhm.
Okay. Most people, when they think about investing in general, we all told this, put it away, set it, forget it, right? You want to put it away for 10 or 15 years and not even look at it, ideally, right?
Mhm.
This operates differently. That's why I call it your personal bank. Uh, it's your bank. It's your money. Brigham, would you rather earn interest on money you borrowed or Wells Fargo or
I would.
Chase or pick a name, right?
Yeah.
The Bank of Brigham, right? That's that's who you want to see succeed. So as I explained to him, I say, look, you're not just putting money away to squirrel it away for the future, a decade or more down the line. A great example, IRAs and 401ks, we all know, unless you're 59 and a half, you have a penalty. So many people I talk to, if you're in your 30s or 40s, you're talking about decades before you can touch that money without significant penalties. This
Yeah.
doesn't have any of that. It's tax free, it's guaranteed, it's highly liquid. We're talking 2/3 to 85% literally day one. Or I
Mm.
should say, I should be clear, 30 days, within 30 days. So this is money you're probably, if you're an entrepreneur, you're probably going to anticipate, or if let's say you have debt, like the guy was telling me, we're going to use this money within 30 days.
Yeah.
So
You can
let's
use
put
it.
in what makes sense. And then let's 30 days from now, take what you can or need to pay off this debt or to buy this asset.
Mhm.
Let's use this as a working tool, a bank. It's yours, right? It's
Yeah.
not just an investment. It does both.
See, I think that's what's great when you have a tool like this is it's
Hmm.
trigger money. It's almost
Right.
taking some of the pain away from the process of buying a property because you don't
Hmm.
have to think, okay, now which bank's going to get all my points and which
Yeah.
bank do I want to actually work with long term? If you're working with yourself, you just need to know, do the numbers work for this deal?
Correct.
I'm willing. Let's do it.
I've had people, they'll access funds in 24, 8 hours. Some of them where they
Yeah.
literally, because they needed to move quickly. Well, they were
Mhm.
able to do so because they had the funds available there in the policy. The cash was there. Boom, pull the trigger, buy the property, and then figure out the longer term financing scenario. Whatever
Mhm.
works out. But they could move quickly, which is a major advantage sometimes.
Yeah, and that's access. One of the things I've
Hmm.
talked about multiple times with people is this idea of you don't just use your money once. This is one of
Right.
those tools where you can use your money multiple times. It's like a line of credit. You pay it in there, use it, put it back, and it rolls. But if you just pay with cash, you're done. It's you have the exchange and it's over. If you pay with a
Right.
credit card, you sometimes even have points on top of the credit card that you're paying to the bank, and eventually that will add up if you're doing a lot of that. But if you're paying yourself, that makes a whole lot of sense.
Well, would you
So,
rather earn interest or pay interest?
mm, yeah, it sounds like earning interest is a better choice.
Well, duh. And how I started
Duh.
using it, yeah. how I started using it myself personally 14 years ago. My very
Uh,
first one, I saw this. I'm like, I had a line of credit like many businesses had. I had
mhm.
payroll. I had 45 employees. Okay.
Yeah.
Um, at that time. So I had, seasonal periods of time like many businesses where you had more income and other periods when you don't, right? I always say Christmas time, nobody wants to talk to their financial guy. Neither do I, because I'm on vacation with my family, right? And that always created a lull of income, right? But you still got
Yeah.
all these thereafter. And so but you still had all these fixed costs like rent, payroll, whatever, right?
Mhm.
So like most businesses, I had a line of credit. And what it always bothered me that when I used my line of credit, the bank was charging me interest at a point in time when I was short of money. I felt like a dog getting kicked while it was down.
Yeah.
All right. And that just always bothered me. It took me 3 years to build up enough money into mine policy to be able to then replace that bank line of credit.
Mm.
Thereafter, then I just started borrowing from myself and still earning some interest on that money instead of getting charged and being. And then when the income flow came back, you pay that back and do it again. I've done it dozens of times, literally, over the years. I use it almost on a monthly basis, frankly. What a lot of my clients will do is they'll put money in, then figure out what the monthly bills are for the month and borrow against it, pay those monthly bills, and still be picking up a little bit of positive arbitrage or spread or cash flow. It's
Yeah.
earning cash flow on the statement I made, Grigam, is banks take in money, right?
Yep.
Deposits, and they do loans and stuff like that. That's called flow. That's something called money flow. This is a
Yep.
banking term. Do banks make money off that flow?
Absolutely.
Of
Get
course. That's what they
little
make money on
things
that
here,
spread.
little fees there,
Exactly.
convenience fees, everything.
Everything. They make money on that flow. You, as an individual or business, have money coming in all the time on a
Mhm.
regular basis. You have expenses going out. Hopefully, you have more in income than expenses, generally speaking, right? And that's called money flow. Brigham, are you making money? Most people, are they making money on that flow?
Not enough. No.
No, they're
Most
not
of the
making
time,
any.
no.
Most
Yeah.
time, no, right? Would you like to make? What if you made let's say you average a couple percent interest on the gross income you made for yourself individually as a household or your business
That's
each
excellent.
and every year the rest of your life? Would you have more money?
Absolutely. That's not a
That's
question.
Yeah,
It's
that's not even a
yes.
question. That's what this tool does.
Hmm.
It's your choice. The banks are going to make the money on the flow or you are. It's your
Mhm.
decision which one it's going to be.
That's beautiful. That just reminded me of another quote. Here's a
Yeah.
great quote. You ready? This is
All
one
right.
I'd use whenever someone say something stupid. I'd say,
Mhm.
"Oh, my sons, be wise. What more can I say?"
I love it.
Not using your tools like this, it's not wise. And I feel like, oh, I just got a slap in the face because I am not using this yet, but I will. So thank you for
Yeah.
the
And
reminder.
like
And
I used that example
yeah,
with that guy, because the car payment, going back to the one we started with,
mhm.
he's like, I'm gonna have the car paid off. I'm doing the 1,200 a month for in 6 months. I'll have it paid off, and then I'm gonna start funding this. Sure, you could do that, or you could start now and start earning positive arbitrage on the money now. He
Mm.
goes, oh my gosh, I never thought about it. Well, guess what he did?
Put
He
the money
started.
in, and then he started paying the car
You want to earn
with
the
the
positive
loan, right?
arbitrage on, yeah, why? Or you can wait 6 months, pay off the car, and then start funding 1,200 a month, which is again more traditional thinking about money.
Yeah,
And if you want to do what the 95% do, you can get what the 95% get. Or if you want to do what the 5% do, you can get what the 5% get. It's your decision.
that's a great point. As you increase access to great tools like this, it makes it so you now have more freedom and more choices. It's not that you
Right.
can't go back and just pay with cash. It's, is there a better utilization of this dollar? Can I use it twice or three times or 12 times, like you said, use it over and
Yeah.
over and over?
Well, and if you don't, I'll share this.
Yeah, go ahead.
I get asked this all the time. So people say, well, all right, I put the money in, I'm earning dividends, your personal bank, and then I borrow against it and, I pay off the bill or whatever. Let's say I have a debt or I'm thinking about it, purchasing an item. Do I
Mhm.
pay cash? Do I finance it? Do I use the personal bank? And I always, it's simple rule of thumb. Right now we're getting 6% insured, guaranteed, tax-free dividends, 6 plus. Okay.
Mhm.
And by the way, 6%, that's equivalent to about 8% return for most people because most investments have taxes, right? This is tax
Yep.
free. Don't forget that. So that's
Yeah.
very competitive. But what I say to people is your loan, your cost of borrowing, should you pay off that loan if you have one? Well, are you earning more or less than 6%? I'm sorry, is the debt higher or lower than 6%? The interest rate on that debt. So a lot of these people, the low interest, mortgages, they got 3% or less. Should they pay those off early? Financially speaking, no. Why would you?
Hmm.
If you can earn 6 and you have a 3% mortgage, why are you paying your house off early?
Right.
You're giving 3% up. And I have a lot of people doing that, and I'm telling them stop.
Yeah, well, I think of it like this because I have a little bit different idea about this
Yeah.
because
All
you
right.
think of like how people accelerate debt. If you're
Yep.
talking about the first 10 years of a mortgage,
Right.
it's not actually 3%. It's not even close. Even if you're at like 7%,
Right.
it's more like 120%. So you
Right.
have to look at the real numbers and see what's
Right.
the
You're talking about the
ratio,
amortization schedule. Right.
amortization schedule. That's really
Yeah.
important to look at
I've
because
done a lot. So let me share, Brigham, a little bit more
yeah,
with you on this,
yeah,
because
go
again,
ahead.
there's a very, very common misconception out there.
Mhm.
You're right, on a 30-year fixed mortgage. So mortgages are unique on loans, car loans, other types of loans, or what's called straight interest. In other
Simple
words,
interest, yep.
every month you pay, we'll go back to this guy's example, 600 a month. He's paying certain percentage of that is principal, certain percentage interest, and it's the
Mhm.
same percentage every month. So that's what's
Right.
called a straight interest loan. That's how most loans work. If your interest rate is, you know, higher than 6%, you should pay it off because you can earn. If it's less than 6%, you shouldn't, because you can earn more. You can get the positive arbitrage. That's very straightforward.
Yeah.
Mortgages are slightly different in one way, in that they're amortized. In other words, the first 7 years, by the way, of a 30-year fixed mortgage, I've shown this in workshops, about 85% of your payments are all interest.
Yeah.
Okay. So you haven't paid down hardly anything in the first 7 years of a 30-year fixed mortgage. But there is the other factor of interest. What's the rate of the interest that you're getting charged?
Mhm.
Again, folks are getting a 3% mortgage, let's say, or 3 or 4% mortgage, really low mortgage, and you apply that money to pay it down early. I understand what you're trying to do. You're trying to knock
Mhm.
down the interest. I get it. But the interest rate is so low, and if you can earn the money 6% guaranteed, double that. By the way, you're talking about compound interest, so you're talking about both
Right.
sides, not being complicated here. Here's the thing most people miss. Compound interest works both to your favor and your detriment.
Mm.
Works both sides. So in other words, if that's called lost opportunity costs. So if you could earn 6% on that money that you were paying extra, let's say you make extra payments on a house payment to knock it down early, but instead you could have earned double. You could have learned double and compound. Run the numbers. You're going to have way more money. It's the difference. The difference in the interest rate is more
Mm.
important than the amortization schedule.
Yeah. And I think it's
It really is.
also time value of money. This is one of those
Yep.
elements that you want to think
Yep.
about too. If you say, hey,
Certainly.
I need access to this money so that I can do this
There's
deal
that.
and make $100,000 on that deal,
Right.
it's definitely worth keeping that line of credit open so you can use that. But if you are banking on paying off your house and then you're like, oh, now I can't make that $100,000 because I have no more access to capital. That's a
Exactly. There's that
really
too.
huge opportunity cost. And that's not like a little bit of a
Yeah.
percentage. That could be exponential growth that you lost out on because you didn't have that trigger money.
Yeah, because you had all your money in the bricks and mortar, not accessible. And
Right.
so a lot of people say, but there's a big emotional, we can't ignore the emotional aspect. A
Totally.
lot of people like having their home paid off. I get that.
Sure.
That's a strong emotional desire, particularly, let's face it, for women more than men, let's be fair. But generally, having their house paid for is a security thing, an emotional thing, right? And
Yeah.
I say this to people all the time. Let's say your house was, you had a $400,000 house, you have a $300,000 mortgage. That's the average house in America. Okay.
Mhm.
All right. Would you rather have that situation, or would you rather have the $400,000 house and $300,000 in cash and a policy that's insured, guaranteed, tax free? In other words, if you decide to pay it off tomorrow, you could, and earning 6% plus dividends on it. Which would you rather have?
In that scenario, the dividend makes a whole lot more sense.
Absolutely.
Right.
Well, you're not going to get there unless you start.
Right.
And
You have to start.
everyone understands that, hey, I'd rather have the funds available and growing and guaranteed rather than having the money tied up in bricks and mortar, where, by the way, I've seen this happen at a time when somebody needs the money. Let's use, financial crisis. I saw this in 08, 09 a lot.
Mhm.
Okay, you've got your money tied up in bricks and mortar. You just lost your job. You need some money. Or COVID. I saw it with COVID too.
Yeah.
And so you need some money. So now you go to the bank. The economy just took a dive. You just lost your income. And now you go to the bank. What's the banker going to say to you?
Sucks to suck. We'll take your
Sorry.
house now.
Yeah, but you got most of your assets tied up in that house, right?
Yeah. Like, well,
Sorry, they're not going to loan you the money, are they?
yeah, they're not.
They're
It's when
not.
you need the money that you don't get the money. It's when you don't need the money that you have access to get lines of credit and
Correct.
all those other things.
So
You got
always
to get where the
having
getting's
access
good.
to it and letting it grow and somewhere safe and guaranteed so you can't lose is always
Mhm.
smarter, because then I had this happen too. People that did the personal bank who lost jobs, businesses, whatever, from
Mhm.
COVID, for example.
Yeah.
Well, now you've got tap and access. You have access to money that carried them over for the next 6 months until they replaced their income or did something different. And they were able to still make their house payments or expenses and whatever
Mm.
without skipping a beat.
That's a great point.
Mhm.
There's so much more to unpack in this
Yeah,
topic,
there
guys.
is.
I know we're just getting the tip of the iceberg. This is why, if you are interested in this personal banking idea, don't let it just be an idea. Go and connect with Ferenc. He's absolutely the expert. He's the GOAT in this respect, the greatest of all time. Definitely want to go out there and connect with him more. How do people find you, and where is the easiest way for them to say, oh, this is for me, I want to talk more?
Go to my website, yourpersonalbank.com. That's the best place to contact me. You'll see, you can listen to my radio show there, or download the Your Personal Bank app, the free app. Each of the shows has its own topic, so you can listen to any of the topics that interest you. You can reach out to me. If you want to meet, we can schedule a Zoom call, whatever you'd like to do. There's no cost or obligation to do that, to look at your situation. But yourpersonalbank.com.
Awesome. Well, thanks so much, guys. I hope you had a ton of value that came from this. Ferenc, it was a pleasure to hear your experience. Definitely had lots of hard-won wisdom, and it
Yeah.
was so exciting to hear some of those experiences. So thank you so much. Looking forward to
Thank you for
connecting
having me.
with you again, and we'll see you next time. God bless, guys.